Join me as I dive into the life of Herodias and uncover the truth behind the woman who played a key role in John the Baptist's beheading. In this video, you'll learn about Herodias, the woman behind John the Baptist's execution, exploring her motivations, relationships, and the historical context of her actions. Herodias is often portrayed as a villain in the biblical narrative, but was she purely evil, or were her actions driven by a complex mix of motivations? Herodias lived in a world of ancient politics, where alliances were forged and broken with ease. As a member of the ruling elite, she knew how to navigate this treacherous landscape, using her cunning and charm to get what she wanted. But what drove her to seek revenge against John the Baptist, a man who was widely revered for his piety and wisdom? To understand Herodias' actions, we need to delve deeper into her backstory. She was a woman of immense power and wealth, married to Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee and Perea. But Herodias' marriage was a troubled one, marked by infidelity and power struggles. Herod Antipas had divorced his previous wife, the daughter of Herodias IV, to marry Herodias, sparking a bitter feud between the two kingdoms. This conflict-ridden environment provided the perfect breeding ground for Herodias' desire for revenge against John the Baptist, who had publicly denounced her marriage as adulterous. Herodias saw John's words as a personal attack, a threat to her very power and status. Little did she know that her vendetta would ultimately lead to a tragic outcome. Herodias' actions raise important questions about the moral and ethical dilemmas surrounding her behavior. Was she justified in seeking revenge against a man who had publicly shamed her, or did her actions cross a moral boundary? These are questions that have puzzled scholars and theologians for centuries, and ones that we'll explore in depth as we examine the events leading up to John the Baptist's beheading. It's easy to villainize Herodias, to see her as a one-dimensional character driven solely by malice and spite. But the truth is far more complex. Herodias was a woman driven by a deep-seated desire for power and validation, a desire that was constantly being thwarted by the men in her life. Herod Antipas, her brother Agrippa, and even John the Baptist himself, all these men held power over her, and Herodias was determined to prove her worth. Herodias' relationship with her daughter Salome was a complicated one, marked by a mix of love, rivalry, and manipulation. Salome was Herodias' ticket to power, her way of gaining influence over her husband in the court. But Salome was also a pawn in Herodias' game of revenge, a pawn that would ultimately seal John the Baptist's fate. As we examine the events leading up to John's beheading, it becomes clear that Herodias' actions were motivated by a toxic mix of desire, revenge, and power. She was a woman driven by her passions, a woman who stopped at nothing to get what she wanted. But this came at a great cost, not just for John the Baptist, but for herself and those around her. In the end, Herodias' actions led to a tragic outcome, one that would have far-reaching consequences for the early Christian church. But what's striking about Herodias' story is how it highlights the dark underbelly of human nature. We're all capable of great evil, but we're also capable of great good. The question is, what drives us to make the choices we do? As we delve deeper into Herodias' background, it becomes clear that her marriage to Herod Antipas was a troubled one. Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee and Perea, was a man consumed by his own desires that often put him at odds with Herodias. The two were bound together by a mix of power, politics, and passion, but their relationship was far from equal. Herodias was the dominant force in this partnership, the one who pulled the strings from behind the scenes. She was a master manipulator, using her charm and beauty to get what she wanted from her husband. But Herod Antipas was no pushover. He was a man who knew how to wield power, and he would stop at nothing to maintain his grip on Galilee and Perea. The political intrigue surrounding Herodias' marriage was intense, with alliances forged and broken with ease. Herod Antipas was constantly at odds with the Nabateans, the ruling dynasty of Nabatea, and Herodias was caught in the middle, using her cunning and guile to navigate this treacherous landscape. But Herodias' relationship with her daughter Salome was perhaps the most complex of all. Salome was Herodias' ticket to power, her way of gaining influence over her husband in the court. But Salome was also a pawn in Herodias' game of revenge, a pawn that would ultimately seal John the Baptist's fate. As we examine the events leading up to John's beheading, it becomes clear that Herodias' actions were motivated by a toxic mix of desire, revenge, and power. She was a woman driven by her passions, a woman who stopped at nothing to get what she wanted. But this came at a great cost, not just for John the Baptist, but for herself and those around her. Herodias' story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition, about the destructive power of desire and revenge. It's a story that reminds us of the complexity of human nature, of the many motivations that drive us to make the choices we do. The moment when Herodias' grudge against John the Baptist culminated in his beheading is a dramatic one, full of tension and suspense. Herod Antipas, in a moment of weakness, promised Salome anything she wanted in exchange for her dancing, and Herodias saw her chance. She manipulated her daughter into asking for John's head on a platter, and Herod Antipas was forced to comply. The consequences of Herodias' actions were severe. John the Baptist was beheaded, and his disciples were left to mourn his loss. But Herodias' actions also came at a great personal cost, for she was forever remembered as the woman who had orchestrated John's murder. As we reflect on Herodias' journey, it becomes clear that her actions were driven by a deep-seated desire for power and validation. She was a woman who constantly felt thwarted by the men in her life, and she would stop at nothing to prove her worth. In the end, Herodias' story is a tragic one, a reminder of the destructive power of desire and revenge. But it's also a story that reminds us of the complexity of human nature, of the many motivations that drive us to make the choices we do. If you found Herodias' story fascinating, be sure to check out our other videos on biblical figures and their impact on history. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below.